Okay, I'm going to talk you through a few key points about choosing a good EPQ title. Now, the crucial thing about EPQ is it lasts quite a long time. And with the best will in the world, you're probably going to find it quite hard going, at least in the middle range of the project. Everyone starts off quite enthusiastic, and then eventually you get a bit fed up, probably. Hopefully, by the end of the project, you're enjoying it again. But in the middle, it can be quite tough going. And in all honesty, if you haven't picked something that you find really, really interesting, it's going to be difficult to stick it. So the number one criterion for choosing a good question is interest. Pick something that you're interested in. It may sound completely obvious, but if you're interested in it, you're far more likely to be motivated and you're far more likely to do a successful project. Now, your interest could be more or less anything. It could be linked to things you've talked about on your EPQ course. It could be linked to things you've studied in your other subjects. It could be a news item that you've seen recently, a book you've read, a film. It could be linked to your hobbies. You might want to link it to your plans for the future, what you're thinking of doing in the future at work, perhaps, or a university course you're hoping to get onto. It doesn't matter. The key thing is follow your heart. Find something you're really passionate about. So my advice would be start with a blank piece of paper and scribble down 5 or 6 things that really interest you, things that really make you think, I'd like to know more about that. And make that your shortlist and choose from there. Once you've come up with a few ideas, do a little bit of research. Google obviously is a place most people go, but why not try Google Scholar? Google Scholar gives you access to really good quality academic sources. And one of the things that you're going to have to do in your EPQ is make use of some proper research material. And if you can't find any stuff out there that's appropriate, that's at the right sort of level, then you're going to find it really, really hard going. So a good way of checking whether or not your question is viable is just to get going, start to find some sources, and if you quickly do find that you can get material that's useful and helpful, that's a good sign that you're onto a good title. And if you can't find anything, or if the only materials that you find are frankly too complicated, too high level, then probably that's not a route you want to go down. So if you've got a good title which you're interested in and you can start finding research materials on, those are really promising signs that you're going in the right direction. Now, another mistake that happens with lots of EPQs is that students pick topics that are interesting, where they can find material, but they end up writing what is, in effect, a rather boring textbook style project. What I mean by that is they write lots and lots of facts, lots and lots of information about Formula One or size 0 models or whatever it is that their topic is, but all they end up doing is writing lots about it, and there's no real focus and there's no real argument. And the mistake that happens because people don't start off by finding subjects where there's something to argue about. So my advice is locate the debate. Make your question controversial. And I don't mean controversial in the sense of offensive, I just mean something you can have an argument about. So take my example there. Should rugby be banned? That's a much better title than what are the risks of rugby? If you ask a question like, what are the risks of rugby? Well, sure, you can do some research, but you'll end up just listing lots of facts and statistics and information. There won't be anything to argue about. But really, we want to get into the question of, okay, what should we going to do about all this information? What does it all really mean? Does it mean that we should ban rugby? Should we have an age limit that you can't do rugby below a certain age because your body's developing? What should we do about all the risks of rugby? That's a better question. It's more controversial, it's more edgy, and it's going to lead you into a much more successful project. So I would say the point about argument is so important that if you can't locate the debate, then again, probably you want to think again and either choose another question or reframe your question to make it controversial. Lastly, a word about practical projects. Practical projects go in a slightly different direction. It's still important to choose something that's interesting. It's still important to choose something you can research. And in a way, it's important to choose something controversial. Not so much because you want to get into either side of a debate, but more because you want something where it's not obvious what the right way to do it is. Suppose you're going to be making a film for a particular audience. The question arises, what's the best way to make that film? Are you going to do it as a documentary? Are you going to do it as a drama, colour or black and white? Are you going to publish it on YouTube? Think about those questions. There's not an obvious right answer. There's options and there's choices, and that's a good thing. You want to be able to get into a project where there's a kind of open quality to it, where there's room to explore different routes for developing it. But what's really important with practical projects is the question, who is the audience? Who are you making your project for? Who is going to watch it or use it at the end? That's going to make a huge difference to what you actually end up producing. So don't just go into it thinking, I'd like to make a film. Ask yourself, if I'm making a film, who is going to watch the film? How do I want them to be affected? Those are questions that will help you to focus your thinking and give you a really clear direction to take. And of course, once you've answered those questions and decided who your intended audience is and what your creative intentions are, then you can actually begin to look at examples of films that other people have made. There's lots of EPQ films, for example, starting to appear on YouTube now. So draw from those, draw inspiration from those, get ideas from those, and use them as part of the melting pot of ideas from which you draw your own creative inspiration. So those are my key points. Start with something you find interesting. Check you can research and find materials. Locate the debate. And if you're doing a practical project, keep in mind your intended audience and your creative intentions.